Okay, hi guys. Happy Tuesday. Taco Tuesday. Woo, woo, woo. Okay. Anyways, welcome back to my read aloud. If you guys remember, yesterday we read about Richard Wright. We're going to continue reading about Richard Wright and to see how he can best overcome the challenges he's encountering as a young African American person in the South. So, right now, one of the last pages, one of the last pages that we read about, what were some of the challenges that Richard was encountering? Okay, so if you look back to this page, it tells you right here, I think a really big challenge for him was that it tells us books were expensive and the doors to the library were shut against him because he was black. So that was one of the big challenges. That also makes me wonder why. Why were these doors shut against him because he was black? Okay, we're going to read on to see how he was able to overcome this challenge. And so I'd like you to think about this challenge, not being able to go to the library. I'd like you to recognize that we have been very privileged to have such a great library. When I say privileged, I mean that we have an advantage. And at Durham, we have a great library where there's plenty of books about different topics. And we have a great librarian, Miss Baumgarten, that will help us find those books. So just take a moment to feel grateful for the opportunities you have, for the access you have to these books. Okay, let's go on. At night, Richard returned to the boarding house, where he ended up renting a room. To save money, he ate beans from a can, warmed by water from the tap. Listening to the noise of the streets below his window, Richard felt a familiar hunger for words. There were thousands of books in the public library, but only white people could get a card and could take them out. But Richard had an idea. At work, he looked around the office, trying to find one man who might understand his hunger for books. So right now, I see that there was a word used, probably not in the way that you normally hear it used. He said there was a hunger for books. What sort of inference can you make from that text clue? He had a hunger for books. What does that mean? How is hunger being used in this case? I don't think it's hungry like you need something to eat. I think it's a different sort of hunger, and I'd like you to make an inference on what hunger means in that case. Let's see if his idea works. For the most part, they were like so many white men he had known before. They would never understand a black boy who wanted a library card, a black boy who wanted to read books even they didn't read. Only one man seemed different from the others. Jim Falk kept to himself, and the other men ignored him, as they ignored Richard. Several times, Richard had been sent to the library to check out books for him. One day, when the other men were out to lunch and Jim was eating alone at his desk, Richard approached him. "I need your help," Richard said. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Jim asked with a suspicious look. "I want to read books. I want to use the library card, but I can't get a card," Richard said, hoping Jim would not laugh in his face. "What do you want to read?" Jim asked, cautiously. "Novels, plays, history?" So here we see Jim right here. So this kind of reminds me of a lot of times I've reached out to somebody for help. So we can see that Richard, he's reaching out to someone for help. At times, we need to reach out to people for help to accomplish our goals and to help us get over that challenge. Here we go. Richard felt confused. His mind was racing so fast, he couldn't think of a single book. Jim said nothing, but reached into his desk and brought up a worn white card. He handed it to Richard. "How will you use it?" Jim asked. "I will write a note," Richard said, "like the ones you wrote when I got books for you." "All right," Jim said nervously. But don't tell anyone else. I don't want to get into trouble. No, sir, Richard promised. I'll be careful. I'm wondering, why would Jim be getting into trouble? He says, I don't want to get into trouble. But why would he be getting into trouble? I'm also wondering, is this plan going to work? What's going to happen if this plan doesn't work? What is Richard going to do then? I'm also wondering, why is Jim, he's fearful that he's going to get in trouble, but yet he still is going to help Richard. So why does he decide to still help him, even though he might get in trouble? After work, Richard walked through the crowded streets of the library. He felt as if he were on a train to Chicago, as if he were traveling north already. So if you remember, he hasn't traveled north yet. He's still in the south. So this is interesting, how this library card makes him feel like he's already traveling up north, where he might be more free. So we see right now that this library card, it represents a lot of things to him. What inference can you make about this library card? What do you think the library card represents to Mr. Richard? Our last page for today. Let's see what happened once he gets. So you can make that inference. Where is he at? What's the setting? Yep, he's probably at the library. Let's see what happens. But when Richard walked through the door, he felt the old fear again. Many heads were raised at the sight of a black boy in the library. Richard kept his eyes down, not looking up until he stood before the checkout desk. The librarian put on her glasses to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Richard handed her the note he had written and stepped back. Why can't Mr. Falk get his own books? She said sharply. He's very busy, Richard replied, his legs trembling. All right, the woman said, but you tell Mr. Falk I'd rather see him in person next time. Richard roamed the stacks, unable to believe there were this many books in the world. He touched the leather spines and looked at the pages, fingered them. He had dreams about them for such a long time. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think he's feeling right now, Richard? What sort of inferences can you make based on the text clues of how Richard's feeling? I wonder how you would be feeling if it was your first time to finally see all of these books. All these books that you had a hunger for reading. Okay, so that's going to be our last page for today. Make sure that you do your exit ticket. Within the exit ticket, there is a reader response question. So there's a question that asks you about Richard and how he's challenging the system. So within the system that he lives in, there's certain rules. Think about those rules and how is he going against them? Why is he going against the rules? Because he is going against a few rules, but there's a reason for why he's going against them. I want you also to think about, alongside that, is how important books are to him. Why are they important to him? Why are books important to you? Okay, so leaving off in those lasting thoughts, we're going to finish the book tomorrow. So let's see what happens to Richard and Mr. Falk. I hope they don't get in trouble. We'll see. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.